everybody that needs one get one? It's on the table back there. If not, if you would, let's go to 1 Kings chapter 12. 1 Kings chapter 12. And I'm not going to touch every king. These are all the northern kings, 19 of them. We could spend a lot of time with each of these. These are scoundrels. These are people that didn't do so well. And so I want to remind you, next Thursday we'll not have prayer meeting. We'll have Sunday all day, the regular services, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, no Thursday meeting. So catch your breath, a little bit, get back at it. So 1 Kings chapter 12, we have the introduction. We kind of looked at how the kingdoms split, became two. It was one, became two. Israel was the 12 tribes. David had been Saul, then David, both of them 40 years. And then David's son Solomon became the king. There was some intrigue there at the beginning. There was another brother that tried to step up. Adonijah, I believe was his name. And he wanted to be king. And David had promised it to Solomon, and Bathsheba. Nathan came, pointed out, "Hey, Adonijah's trying to get the kingship here. You're missing it." He was quite old by then, near death, and he said, "No, we're going to get Solomon in." He had the priest anoint him, and Nathan anointed him as the king, and Solomon served. Solomon started out very well. He asked of the Lord. Well, God came to him in a dream, if you remember that. God said, "Yeah, you ask what you want of me." Well, what a thing. That would be a thing, wouldn't it? God say, "Whatever you want, you ask it of me. I'll give it to you." And Solomon doesn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for anything. He says, "I want wisdom, understanding to lead your people to bring my judgment to the place that would honor and help these people." That's what God gives him, and then he poured out on him everything else. And he begins and builds the temple. 7 years it took. And his son Rehoboam, and I'm getting them all twisted in my head here, Rehoboam. And so there's a fight for the rule, so to speak. Solomon had been heavy-handed with the taxes. He's building. Always takes more money to build than you think. And so he builds the house of God, but he also builds his house, and he has this conscripted labor. He's a levy. At one point, there's 30,000 men that have been sent to Lebanon to cut lumber. They served 10,000 one month, another 10,000 the next month, and the third month another 10,000. So they're rotating just again and again. And so you imagine 4 times a year you'd go to Lebanon, I guess, if it's that big of a job. And so you lose 4 months a year. That's not for you. 4 months out of the year, you can't work your property. You can't work your ground. You can't run your business. You got to do it for the king. And so they come to Solomon's son and they say, "Hey, will you get your boot off of our neck? Will you get off of us and give us a little breathing room?" The old men say, "Yes, you give them some space." He asks his younger counselors, his friends, and they say, "No, double down on it, make it even harder on them." And he comes back and says, "Yeah, my dad did this." He said, my dad struck you. I'm going to strike you with scorpions," I think is how it said. And so the kingdom splits, and then you have the northern kingdom. There's 10 tribes. The southern kingdom is Judah and Benjamin. And so the northern kingdom has these 19 kings over the course of its history. 931 to about 722, it lasts a little bit over 200 years. Every northern king is wicked. Every one of them. Every one of them follows the sins of Jeroboam. Look here in 1 Kings 12, verse 26. It says, and Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam, king of Judah, Rehoboam's Solomon's son. And they shall kill me and go again to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And so he's thinking in his heart and in his mind, Jeroboam is, he's saying, you know, if they're always going back to Jerusalem, their heart's going to be at Jerusalem. Their heart's going to be at the temple. Their heart's going to be, it's going to get tied back to Rehoboam, and I'm going to lose them. I'm going to lose their heart. They're not going to follow me anymore. He said, they're going to kill me. He says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell them it's too far. It's too much for you to go to Jerusalem. I'm only thinking of you. That's what he's saying. I'm only thinking of you. It's for your good that I've created this other thing. And he makes 2 calves, 2 golden calves. One is, he puts in verse 29, it says that he set the one in Bethel and the other in Dan. So he sets them in these 2 places that seem to be convenient. It's a religion of convenience. He's creating this on the go. He's making this up on the fly. And so it's kind of like what they've had. It's close to, but it's not the same. And so he says in verse 20, and he says, and this thing became a sin, and for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. He made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not of the sons of Levi. So he's creating this whole structure for worship that is not built around God. It involves idol worship, and God's not for that. He said not to make any graven image. Don't use anything in your worship to represent me or somehow get you closer to me. And so he's creating this. He's made another temple, another place for them to come, a high place for these idols. He takes of the lowest of the people. What kind of person is the lowest of the people? Yeah, I think it's not so much their position, but it's their character. Prostitutes, the unholy, people that have no integrity, people that don't care for the things of God. He said, I'm taking those people. Now, God could take a prostitute, someone that has no integrity. He could save their soul and change them, but he's not doing that. He's using them the way they are to be his priests. So he's got a idol, he's got places, he's got a structure, he's got priests. And it says, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah, and he offered upon the idol. So did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. So he offered unto the upon the altar which he had made in Bethel the 15th day of the 8th month, even in the month which he had devised of his own heart, and ordained a feast unto the children of Israel. And he offered upon the altar and burnt incense. And God had outlined all these feasts for Israel to have, and all these special times of the year to memorialize. You know, the Passover was a remembering of that night all those years ago. They'd taken the lamb, they'd taken the blood and put it on the doorpost and the lintel, and the death had passed over them, and the firstborn did not die. He said, all these things God instituted had purpose. He just came up with a date in his mind, and he's laying it alongside this. And the sins of Jeroboam were mighty, huge. And so, what's God think about that? Look in chapter 13. It says, and behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. He's doing what he's created. It says, and he cried the man of God, against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. And he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. This man of God shows up, this prophet, and he starts to prophesy against this altar that he's created. He's standing, he's pointing, and he's saying, that is not of God, basically. He's saying that it's going to be torn down. It's not going to last. It's going to be torn apart. And so here's the king. He's standing there. He's seeing that he's not liking it. He's not at all. It says, and it came to pass when King Jeroboam, in verse 4, heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, Lay hold on him, and his hand which he put forth against him dried up, so they could not pull it in again to him. He said, you lay hold of that guy, and his hand dries up. It's changed. God brings judgment on his hand. He asked the man of God to ask God to change it. He does change it. And so if maybe later you take a look at the list here, you're going to see almost every king had some opportunity to hear from some prophet. God sent somebody to rebuke them or to give them the word of God. God gave opportunity for them to turn around. God gave them opportunity to hear. And so what a privilege it is to have people in your life that would call you on the carpet, that would seek to bring you back. And so we don't even know this man's name. And the king at some point, he says, let me bring you into my house. I'll refresh you. And he says, I'm not turning into your house at all. And that's not going to happen. It's a crazy thing that happens after that. But just saying that these priests, these prophets are there to bring these kings back. And, the list goes on. Some of them are the son of the king before them. And some of them are not. They kind of step out of the shadows and try to take over power. Jeroboam was first. Nadab was second. Baasha is next. He's wiping out all of Jeroboam's dynasty. Elah is next. He's murdered while he's drunk. And some of these kings here from Baasha, the third one, Elah, Zimri, and Omri, all of that takes place. There's like 4 kings in about 2 years. One of them, he reigns for about 6 months. Zimri is a king for only a week. And so you see this constant turmoil. That's what sin brings you to disorder. It's an unsettled land. You can imagine if every other week you say, who's the king now? You wouldn't feel very good about that. And some of it is, no doubt, the judgment of God is falling on these people, the chaos of all that. And there are countries like that in our world today where it is just this constant turnover. There are nations in Africa. You think about the island, part of it, Haiti, is a place of incredible turmoil, a place that, where gangs just rule the country in some sense. And, there is leadership that needs to come. And it is, God says for us to pray for our leaders. And if we can have peace, it's a great thing. And so Omri gives place to a man by the name of Ahab. Most of us probably have heard of Ahab. Who is Ahab's wife? Jezebel. So Ahab and Jezebel are somebody that's very prominent in our mind. We know about them. She was particularly a promoter of Baal worship, or a false god. And they, in particular, she opposes Elijah. And so Jezebel is a facilitator of pretty much whatever Ahab wants. Is it Naboth, I think it is, that has the vineyard. And Ahab's looking over the wall. He says, man, what a nice vineyard there. Hey, Naboth, will you sell me that vineyard? He says, I can't. It belongs to the family. It wouldn't be a right thing for us to do. And, Ahab's just so sad. He's the king. Can't have what he wants. And she says, what's wrong? He said, I wanted the vineyard, And she said, I'll get it. She lies about Naboth, and him and his sons are murdered, and Ahab's happy now. He's got what he wants. But it costs the lives of these men. And so that's the kind of people they are. And so look in 1 Kings 17. And we've not met this man yet in Scripture, but he shows up here in 1 Kings 17, verse 1. It says, and Elijah the Tishbite. It's like he just steps out of the darkness. He steps out of the shadows. We don't know anything about him up to this point. We've not seen him. He bursts on the scene. The nation's in a great struggle. The leadership is incredibly wicked. And God sends Elijah to deal with this. I think probably Elijah's praying for his nation. God, do something. God, change this. And God says, well, okay, I'm going to use you to do it. And so he steps out of the shadows here, and it says, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab. He gets into his throne room. He says, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand. I'm standing in front of you, but I'm also standing in front of God. There shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And God tells him in verse 3 to get hence and turn eastward, go to the brook Cherith. That's where you're going to be fed and watered. And so eventually that's going to dry up, and he's going to go to Zarephath, to the widow's house. And eventually he's going to find his way. God's done, ready for the battle that takes place on Mount Carmel. And I tell you, it's one of the most exciting stories, one of the great accounts of real events in the Bible. And I got just a little note here that God raises up some of our strongest servants, his strongest servants, against the most wicked of people. And so you're thinking that, man, it's as bleak as it's ever been. It's a hard day. But God raises up, and he's going to raise up out of our midst, maybe our children, to do a mighty work. And so when you look at Ahab and the time that he reigned over 20 years. And God uses Elijah in his life. He uses a man by the name of Micaiah. And Ahab doesn't like him. No doubt about it. He doesn't like him at all. And so you have him passing off the scene eventually. Elijah has great victory at Mount Carmel. Then he has this crushing personal defeat where he wants to die, and God reveals himself. He gives him a helper in the man, another prophet, Elisha. And so Ahaziah is the 8th king. Jehoram is also a king here. Let me mention this. Turn to 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings 4. And so, now you remember this, in 1st and 2nd Kings particularly, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, there is this weaving of Israel, which is the northern kingdom, and the weaving of the southern kingdom, which is Judah and Benjamin. And so it's like it's back and forth. And so you got to really stay on top of who is what and which king are they talking about. And so something like this, maybe you put in your Bible somewhere, and as you're reading that, you can say, okay, that's that king, that's the northern king, or this is the southern king. And so, but along with these different kings that are going on, there's also the different prophets that God's using. And two of the most prominent prophets that are used during the books of the Kings, that would have been one book in the Hebrew Bible, is Elijah and Elisha. Elijah is first. The chariot of fire carries him away. Doesn't die. What a way to go, right? A blaze of glory. And then you got his assistant, or the person he's mentoring, Elisha that picks up his mantle, picks up this physical piece of clothing, but he picks up his task. He asks for a double portion of God's Spirit on him. And Elisha is recorded doing double the miracles that Elijah does. And so you remember these kings, all of them in the northern kingdom are wicked. Elijah's facing Ahab, and these men that are falling behind are just as wicked in many ways. But you have these accounts of people that are living in the face of incredible darkness and wickedness that are doing right. And this is one account here in 2 Kings 4, verse number 8. It says, "And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. Hey, come into the house, eat some food. You and your servant there, Gehazi. Hey, come in, I've fixed a meal for you." I think it's probably not just bread, but bread's a good thing. Hey, come in and eat some bread with us. And it says, "And it was so that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread." So anytime he passed by there, when he smelt food cooking in the kitchen, he'd stop by. He had an open place at the table. And it says, "And she said unto her husband," in verse 9, "Behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither." And so she says to her husband, she says, I know that this is a holy man of God. I could see it on him, the way he walks with God. We ought to do something to help him in his ministry. And one of the things that he could use is the place to rest, a place to come and settle down for a night, a place that would be safe, a place that he could have some food, a place that he could study. And so, today when we talk sometimes about churches that have an apartment, a place for missionaries to stop in, I still use this term, a prophet's chamber. That's where that came from, the thought of a prophet's chamber, a missions apartment. This is birthed out of a woman's heart to be a blessing to this man of God, this prophet. And so her husband trusts her, and they build this apartment. And Elijah's thinking, they've done such a nice thing for us. She's opened up her heart and her home, and she cooks for us. What does she need? Gehazi finds out, she wants to have a child. And so he calls her in and says that she stands in the door, and he says that you're going to have a child. She has a little boy. And the account goes on. I don't have time to tell the whole story, but it's an amazing story. The boy grows up. He gets sick. The little boy comes, his dad sends him home from the field. He's laying on the lap of his mother, and he dies. She puts him in the room, the body of the boy. She goes after the man of God. It is a powerful, powerful story. Elisha sends ahead his servant. Do what you can. He can't do anything. But when Elisha gets there, God gives that little boy back his life. It's an amazing story. Gehazi falls out of favor with God. Gehazi is a liar. Later, he's telling the story to a king. I can't remember who he's telling it to, but he's telling a story about how Elisha did this. And it's either the mother or the son shows up. He said, these are the people. These are the people I was telling you about. And so God gives us these things weaved into all this. You think, it's death and suicide and killing and just it's just on and on and on. It's what a bad world we're living in. And then God gives us, look at this. Here's people living for God in the face of all that. And so there's also this connected with Elijah and Elisha in the face of all this political awfulness are these people, these sons of the prophets. It's an organized group they're being trained in a sense to do the work of God. and that's going on also. Jehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam the second, Zechariah, Shalem, Menahem, Pekaniah, Pekah, and Hoshea. Hoshea is the last king of Israel. And oftentimes, when it's describing these men, some of them seem to be a little bit better than others. There's some of them that seem to try to do something right, but it always references this, that they have continued in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. And I think it's worth noting this, that this one man, the first king of the northern kingdom, his sins followed along, and everybody stayed in that same groove. They stayed in that same place. It is incredible how powerful the influence for evil some people can be. They continued in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. It's always this, you've continued that. And sometimes we think, oh, that's not such a big deal anymore. That's nothing. We've gotten used to that. But God it's always in God's mind, that is wrong. If it's wrong to God, it's always going to be wrong. I've not forgotten that. And so, for those that are on live stream, it is raining hard. I like to hear the rain. But anyway, I think that's probably about all I got with this, I think. So we're going to, at some point, here in a couple weeks, we'll look at the southern kings, and some of them do well. Some of them attempt to be righteous. And so Hoshea is the last king. Israel ends in captivity to the Assyrians. They're carried away. They're put in exile. They're dispersed throughout the world. So it's a sad ending. And Judah's going to be, I think, a couple hundred years after that, the same thing's going to happen. So anyway, when we break up in just a couple knots of twos and threes and take just a couple minutes and pray together, maybe share something, one of you, and then to pray together. And I don't know how you want to do this. Maybe what do we do? Maybe Jimbo and May, why don't